guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the fifth episode for our Zoom automation application series, which we sadly had to rename it from ZoomBot to Zoom Auto because some other guy took the name ZoomBot before us. But keeping that aside, in this video what we're going to be doing is we will be creating a timer or a clock for our application so that it can know when to start a scheduled meeting that we gave in its meeting list. And with this, we will also be updating our automation script file and make it possible that it can retrieve data from the SQL database and enter the name, ID, password, and other values which is corresponding to the exact date and time of the meeting it is starting. And after this video, your Zoom Auto application can perform basic functions such as starting a meeting at the exact given time with the name, ID, and password you gave. But the only issues that you will face is that if any kind of errors come up, your program will crash. That means you have to give a correct ID and password always, and also you should have a decent internet connection. But in the next video, we will be doing something called error handling. Now in error handling, we will program the code in such a way that it can prevent the application from crashing if any error occurs. That might be internet issues, wrong ID, or password problems. And with that being said, let's get into the video. And as usual, before starting, we need to install some packages. And by some, I mean one. And this is called Plier. So Plier is a package which helps us to create notifications using Python in Windows. This is going to be used when the meeting is going to start. So when the meeting starts, we will show the notification the meeting is about to start. So for this, first we have to do pip install Plier in your command prompt or wherever you use to install packages using pip. And for me, it as usual says requirement already satisfied because I have it installed. If you guys don't, it will be showing installing or downloading or such. And keeping that aside, we have opened our automation script file from the first episode, and we also have our Zoom Auto UI file and the main UI and storage system files just in case. I don't think we're going to be using them today, but these two files are going to be necessary just for now. So let's get into our first time lapse. And this ends our time lapse. Now first, let's go check our new imports, which is from here to here. So the first module is our threading module. The second one is our notification module, which we imported from Plier that we installed in the beginning of the video. And the third one is our sleep function from our time module, which most of you guys must be familiar with. And then we have the date time module, and with that we also have a URL open module, which I'll explain why we need it in the code. And last, we have our Pywin auto module, which is used to automate Zoom. With this, we also have 4 new functions, which is start thread, timer, check network, and also start meeting, which contains all our automation script that we created in the first episode in our automation script file. And let's begin our explanation from our timer function. Now, if you guys notice our timer function, you can see a parameter called meetings. Now, this variable will contain all the meetings in our data frame format that we use to feed into our SQL database, which you can see in our save table function right over here. And now after that, we have a variable called self.flag, and we set that to true. Now self.flag was created in the beginning of our code, which is right here, flag equals none. In the beginning, we set it to none, and then we can change it to true or false. The reason we are using a flag or the variable self.flag will be explained when we reach the function start thread. And after that, we have a line called while self.flag. Now, as the function starts, flag is set to true. So that means while self.flag is also equal to while true. And most of you guys might know that while true is an infinite loop. The reason that we need an infinite loop is because this timer should infinitely or constantly keep checking the current time and the times of the meetings so that it can know when to start the scheduled meeting. That's why we need an infinite loop. Now in the next variable, which is curTime, short for current time, we store the current time in string format and in the format we need. That means we use the datetime module to get datetime.now, which is the current date and time, and we shift that its format to the format that we use in the application, which is, let's run the code, and yep, it's right here, this format, so that it is easy to compare the current time and the time in the application and check to see when to start the application. So this whole code will be in datetime format, and to convert it into string format, we are using str. And after this, we have a for meeting time in meetings bracket date time. So if you guys remember in our previous videos, date time is one of the columns in our data frame right here. This data frame will contain all the date and time of that table. Now to explain this a bit more, this is what I'm going to do. I have a sample table prepared here with sample names, and let's quit this app for now. Okay, and let's clear that, CLS. After this, let's do a print blank so that we can get some blank space between these two print functions. Okay, so let's do a print n slash, or was it /n? Yeah, it's this one. Okay, now if I hit run and I hit save, you can see we have two different prints. So the first one, this is a whole data frame, the data frame which contains the names and IDs and passwords. And this one is what our meeting bracket date time is. So when you do a bracket date time or any column names, it removes that one single column. So this is a whole data frame. And when I did meetings bracket date time, it gave me only the datetime column. So to separate out the only datetime column, we use meetings bracket datetime or any kind of column name in these codes. Now, if you know, for meeting time in meetings means it will go through each and every one of these times. So first it will go through the first one, then the second one, then the third one, and the for loop runs 4 times. So every 4 time it checks our current time, which is this one right here, and the meeting time, which might be any of these 4 in order. So the current time and this time will be cross-checked every single second to see whether it's the exact time or not. And after that, we have a self.check network. In case if the if statement is successful and the current time and the meeting time is the same, it goes to the function called check network. So check network is right here, and what this does is it checks the network whether your computer or your device is connected to the internet or not. Because if your application is not connected to the internet, Zoom automation, the Zoom application will not start quickly. It will keep on loading. So this might cause errors to our application or this application or the code, which might lead it to crashing. So to prevent this from happening, first we are going to be checking the internet connection, and if we do have an internet connection, then it goes to our start meeting function, which contains our automation script. So to explain our check network function, in the first line we can see a variable called not underscore connected equals true. Now after that we also have another line which contains while not underscore connected, which means while true, because not connected is true. This is the same thing that we did over here in our timer function, which means while not connected becomes an infinite loop. Now after that we use our try except catch. So in try we use our URL open module to connect to a certain website, which is Google in this case. This tests our internet connection. So if I try to connect to Google now, but I have disconnected my internet. So if I try to connect to Google using URL open, it says URL open error, get address info failed, which means I do not have an internet connection ready. Because of this, I cannot connect to google.com. That means if our code fails over here, it goes to accept instead of try, and it sets not connected back to true. And whenever the not connected is true, this while loop will keep on running. So after this, we sleep for 1 second or delay the code for 1 second, and then we go back to our while loop and try again to connect to google.com. If it still fails, it goes to accept, and it keeps on continuing until this becomes successful. When this URL open is successful to connect to Google, it will set our not underscore connected to false, which will break our while loop. And after this we will return back to this code. That means return back to this if statement. Okay, now in start meeting you can see there are two parameters. The first parameter will be meeting time, and the second parameter is meetings. Now meeting time is the time of the meeting that we need to start, or the program needs to start. And meetings, as I said before, is the whole data frame which contains the meeting list. And in here, the first line, you can see that we are creating a variable meeting details equals meeting.setIndex bracket datetime, which is again the column name of our datetime column. Now in this, the first parameter, as I said before, is time, which is the time of the meeting that we need to start, and meeting, which is the whole data frame. Now in meeting details, when we do meeting.setIndex datetime, what happens is if I print, say, meeting details. Oh wait, let's do this in our save table function. It'll be more easier. So if I come here and do another print /n and do a print meeting dot set underscore index bracket date time. Now after this, wait, it says we have an error. No, we don't have an error. Okay, so what happens now is if I run the code and I hit save, the first one is our table, the second one is our datetime column, only datetime column, and in here this is our meeting.setIndex datetime. Now what happens now is that you can see that inside this whole table our meeting data datetime column is not there after our password column. Instead it's in the beginning, because now our datetime column is the index for this whole table. And by index you can also call it as, let's say, our row ID. So each one of these states tend to serve as our row ID for the whole table. So what we do now is that we need to get the name, ID, password, and our audio and video details. To get this, what we do is name equals meeting details, which is this whole data frame, and then we do a classic row and column mapping. So here you put the column name, and then we put the row ID as the current time, the time that we need to start the meeting. So suppose the time is 9th June and 1623, and we need to find our name. So our name column is right here, and the time is this, so the name that we get here is Jeffrey. And the ID, the same way, here is the column, and this is our date time, and the ID that we get is 234 234 234. The same for password, audio, and video. That's what we do here. Name is our column name, and time is our index. ID is our column name, time is our index, the same for password, audio, and video. And after that, we will be using our notification module to notify that a meeting has been started, or a meeting is starting, the process is starting. So the first Zoom Auto is the title of the notification. This is our text, and this is the name of the application, and this is the path to the icon for the notification. And after this, this from here to here and from here to here is our old and original code, which that we got from our automation script file. So this is the code from, okay, here. This code is from here to here and from here to here. This is our original code. And in between, we added this new code to control our audio and video checkboxes that you see right here. And these two are the handles for the audio and video checkboxes, like the usual handles that we find over here for our join button and text boxes. And one unfortunate thing is that we cannot set our check state for our checkboxes. That means for our Qt widget or our Qt checkbox, we used to use the function dot check state right here, and we put the numbers either 0 or 2 so that the checkbox can either be checked or unchecked. But in Python Auto, for some reason, we cannot do that. Instead, the only thing we can do is toggle the checkbox. That means if the checkbox is already checked, then we can toggle it to uncheck it. And if the checkbox is unchecked, we can toggle it to be checked. We cannot specify if we need it to be unchecked or checked. That's why we need to use a small if statement logic. So first, what we do is that we have our audio and video numbers. That means this might be either 0 or 2 in these both no audio and no video variables. So 0 means that it should be unchecked, and 2 means it should be checked in Qt. And in Python Auto, 0 means unchecked and 1 means checked. So that might be a bit confusing. So here in audio underscore ts, which is toggle state, the short for toggle state, so audio underscore toggle state, we do audio dot get underscore toggle state. And these two are the handles for audio and video checkboxes I said before. And next we have video underscore ts, which is video's toggle state right here using get toggle state. Now these values might be 0 or 1 as I said before. So here in the first statement, what we do is if no audio is equal to 0, that means if our no audio checkbox in the Qt, the Qt UI is unchecked, and the audio TS, the audio toggle state in our Python Auto checkbox is 1, we have to toggle it to make it 0, so that we have audio. And after that, in the second statement, if no audio equals to, that means if no audio is checked and audio underscore ts, which is toggle state, is unchecked, then toggle it so that the checkbox in our Python Auto becomes checked and not unchecked. And the same thing we are doing for our video checkbox. I hope that was explained. And the rest are the same things that we did before. The join button, we have our password box and we enter the password in it, and we also hit the join button in our password box, and then we notify Zoom Auto meeting joined, and this is the title as I said before, and this is our icon for the notification. And that brings us to the last and final function, which is our start thread function. Now the start thread function uses a threading module which is inbuilt in Python, which is used to create new threads in our Python program. For those of you guys who don't know what threading is, this is threading in a nutshell. Now in front of you, you can see two separate functions, which is dummy1 and dummy2. Now in these two functions, you have two separate infinite while loops, which is while true, and inside those while true, you have two separate print functions that print separate digits, which is 0 and 2, so that we can identify which function is running. And we also delayed those print functions by a 0.5 seconds because a while loop runs so fast you can't see what's happening. That's why we are delaying it by a 0.5 second. Now our goal is to make sure that these two functions run simultaneously. So if we try to call the functions like dummy1 and dummy2 in order, and when I hit run, you can see only 0 gets printed because dummy1 is the only function that's running. This is where threading comes in. Every Python script or every program you run has at least one single thread. Now in this thread, every code that you write goes in an order. So to explain this, I have another small piece of code here in which we have two separate lists, A and B. A starts from 1 to 5 and B starts from 0 to 6 or 09876. And I have two functions like the same, and for I in A we print I, and for I in B we print I, or the same. Now if I hit run now, the same thing happens in order. So first I've called the function 2, and as you guys can see, the first numbers are 0, 9, 8, 7, and 6. That is what this function calls. And the second function is our function 1, which calls 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So everything in a Python program goes in an order if there's only one thread. This is where multi-threading comes in. So for this, to make sure that these two while loops run simultaneously, we give each function their own individual threads. So this function gets its own thread, and this function also gets its own thread. We do that by using our threading module like this. So the first, we give thread the target, which is target the function's name, and the same for thread 2, and then we start the target or start the thread. And this join function does nothing but stop the thread once the process is complete. So now if I hit run, you can see both the numbers get printed simultaneously. Now the order doesn't matter as long as those both while loops run simultaneously. Now the order changes according to some millisecond difference, which depends on your computer's processing and RAM. This is where we use multi-threading. Now the reason we are using multi-threading in our program is because one of these functions is our timer and one of the other functions is our UI. This is because the UI that we are running needs one whole thread. Now you cannot delay the UI. So if you delay the UI by any chance, that UI will crash. So to prevent the UI from crashing, we need to create another thread for the timer so that both the UI and the timer can run continuously without crashing. And now for our start thread function. In the first line, we have a variable called meeting list in which we convert the whole SQL database into a data frame format, the pandas data frame format, using our read data function in our storage system file right here. And now after that, we can skip this line for now, and we can go to this line in which we create the thread for our timer function. So we use the thread function from threading, and then we give the target as our timer function and also give the arguments or our parameter as the meeting list, the data frame which we created over here, and we receive that data frame over here. And after that, we delay the program by a second, which will be explained, and then we start the thread. And in this point, the UI and the timer thread or the timer itself run simultaneously without any kind of interruptions. And now for this little variable. So every time you save the file, you can see that we start the thread again. The reason is that the meeting data in the timer will be outdated every time you save the table, because this table in the meeting data does not, the timer function does not get updated every time you hit save. So to update this timer function, you need to restart this timer. But sadly, you cannot do that because this timer function is on another thread. And the only way to restart the timer is to kill the thread. But unfortunately for us, there is no option to kill a thread like thread.stop or thread.kill. Because of this is why we use the self.flag function, the self.flag variable. Now a thing is that every thread will only kill itself or die when the process inside the thread is over. But in this case, the process inside this thread is infinite because it is while true. But over here, every time we call the start thread function, we set the self.flag variable to false. So when the self.flag variable goes to false, the while self.flag, which was while true, becomes while false. and when it becomes while false, the infinite loop closes and hence the process is killed. And when the process is killed, the thread dies. And when the thread dies, you can go ahead and create another thread and restart the whole timer function, which simultaneously updates the meeting data inside it. That is the whole series. Now, the reason why we give a sleep for 1 second is because we also give a delay for 1 second in the timer. So that if we don't give the sleeps, if we don't give the sleep function, there's a chance that the timer's thread might overlap or cause some issues. Because of that, we delay the program by a second here, and then we start the thread once again. And that is basically how this whole program works. And in the beginning too, we start the thread because we need the timer to run every time you start the application, so we call start thread over here too. And now after that, I think we have completed the explanation for the whole program. And with that, I also made a few small changes. One change is that I added the seconds to our datetime function, or the current time function, in this variable, so that we'll get a bit more precise timing on when to start the meeting. And with that, also I added another parameter in a SQLite3.connect function, which is called check underscore same underscore thread equals false. The reason is we have two threads in our Python program, and that might cause errors to our SQLite module, because the developers of SQLite module say that if you have two or more than one thread in a Python program and access the database from another thread, it might cause the data inside the table to be corrupted. It's a very less chance, but I'm not taking any risks. So we are giving check underscore same underscore thread equals false. The reason is that I accessing the table or the SQLite table from the timer thread using the save table function. Because after a meeting has been started and joined, we delete that certain meeting from the table using this function of delete meeting. And after that, we save and update the new table back to the database. So when you save that table from the timer thread and not the main thread, it might cause an error. So to prevent that from happening, we add this one parameter. And I guess that's pretty much it. So now let's go ahead and test the application. So I hit the run button and the application pops up. That's good. And I've given the name, ID, and password. All I have to do is change the time. So the current date and time is, this is 12th June, and the time is 19:07. So I have to give 19:08, and I hit save and wait for the application to start. And there you go, the meeting has started. The notifications showing, and now it will hit the join button anytime soon. There you go, it hit the join button, the ID, the name, the checkbox, the password, and there you go, we have successfully joined a meeting. And now all you have to do is hit join with computer audio, and you have done it. So I guess that's pretty much it for this video, and in the next video, as I said, we will be doing some kind of error handling and some final last touches and small functions. And with that, we should be ending our series. And in the very last episode, which might be a live stream, I will be packaging the application to an exe, and that exe we will convert it to an installer, and then I'll upload it in my GitHub page so you guys can download it. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you like my content, please make sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.